So, hi everyone, I'm Austin. My day job is I write C and C++ for microcontrollers. So, literally, the thing on here powers all of our devices at our startup. But I thought for fun, I would try Python out and get into LLMs. So, go from the metal to the top of the stack and skip all the stuff in between. Um, how many of you guys subscribe to email newsletters like TLDR or others? Okay. How many are subscribed to more than one and go insane trying to keep up with all of them? Yeah, seems to be a common problem. So I got the bright idea a while ago to say, what would it take to basically funnel the raw emails themselves like into a system and then just use LLMs to smash them together, basically. So this is kind of just a personal pet project of mine I've been working on. And it's very, very raw. So feel free to make fun of me and poke out all the holes. But so far, it's working pretty well. So yeah, the general idea is a couple of ones that I like to subscribe to are both TLDR's like main one, and then they have like an AI focused one too. As you can imagine, several articles will overlap. So the idea is, get all the information and combine them. And my other goal too was depending on who wrote what article and what edition, especially across newsletters, you might have unique information that one person dug up or wrote about, right? But another newsletter wouldn't have at all. So that's kind of the other idea is to not miss any news, any information, smash it all together, make it appear as one. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do, this is really weird driving like this. Sorry, guys. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is forward this to my system because it'll take a couple minutes to process it. But the way I designed this is instead of like hoping there's an RSS feed and hoping the RSS feed is relatively similar per email newsletter, I decided to take a much harder approach, but I knew it would work out in the end. And that's what if you could just generate literally an email for users or for yourself, like an email account, and then you just go subscribe to all the email newsletters with like your own unique email. It's like user interface everyone's already used to, right? And then you don't have to worry about it, right? If it says, hey, give me your email and we'll give you a newsletter, then our system works, or my system works, right? So that's kind of what I did here. I'll cover this in the slides, but one thing to get this all working that I had to figure out was you do need to go get your own domain name, but like this one's like 50 cents a month. And I have one, it's like austinottinger.com. It's 50 cents a month. So domain names are cheap. If you've never bought one, don't be afraid to go buy one. And then the cool thing is if you want to use the root domain, so you can see like I have like this fun one, Next Byte Development. If you want to use that for like your website or for like your Google Suite, right, to have real emails, then all you got to do is add a subdomain on, and you can register the subdomain with AWS, and that counts as like the full back end of your email address. And then the front, for those of you who don't know, this is completely made up. So if you're going to do this yourself, you can give yourself whatever you want. If you're going to build a system, you can generate that. Anything with this, root domain, and in my case, subdomain, it'll come into AWS. And then from there, it's on you to figure out whose email it is. So I'm going to go ahead and send these to myself. Look at this one. And again, I'm just emulating. I haven't like gone to TLDR yet and punched in an email for my system because I'm still kind of like testing my back end. But the general idea is, instead of forwarding them to yourself, we're trying to bypass all of this, right? So there we go. Okay, so while that's going, I'll get the fun part up. What's up? Yeah, I mean, and in the future, like I hope to create like a super news system. So why not, just go plug it in. But again, I wanted to do something unique, and I knew the email thing was foolproof, and probably not a lot of people would think to, how do I set up an email server? Because stuff out there like MailChimp and maybe like your go-to you guys would think of. There's others that are really developer friendly. All of these different services I found out were all about, sending email. but some of them said coming soon, like literally finally as of this year, which blows my mind, but receiving email. So AWS though has had their simple email service SES for a long time, and it's basically a fully managed email service, and you can send and receive. So that's kind of the backbone of all of this. And I mainly help out with the AWS user group, so kind of best of both worlds. Get my hands dirty in Python. I've been starting to come to these Python meetups, and then I've been helping out the AWS one. We use AWS at our company too, so kind of just mashing everything together, trying to make everything work. So I got like a super quick. By the way, this entire slideshow I generated with AI, including the diagrams. So if you want to know how I did the diagrams, there's a little watermark. It's eraser.io. So yeah, to make your own GenAI newsletter processing pipeline, you need a domain name, like I mentioned, AWS account. Both are super cheap. AWS accounts are free. They have a pretty good free tier, and it's super easy to get credits also. Um, I am using OpenRouter for my LLM calls. If you guys don't know what that is, it's an OpenAI SDK compatible service where you can just hot swap to any model on a lot of different services. And they have a lot, bigger limit when you start out. So if you go to like OpenAI, like a lot of people do, throw in $5, get your API key, they throttle the crap out of you because everyone's trying to use their service. So OpenRouter gets around the throttling if you're not trying to pay a lot of money to experiment. And then, yeah, you can hot swap models with just like that. Basically, the model tag in the OpenAI SDK, you just swap that out and you can go from OpenAI to Anthropic to open source models on like Fireworks. So there's a lot of cool things. So it's a great way to also just test models in your project. And I am using OpenAI also just for their embedding model. OpenRouter is limited to just doing LLM calls for like text, and I think you can do some multimodal calls, but all the embedding models are unfortunately not on there yet. So I hope they add that soon. So yeah, here's an example. Go to eraser.io. I'm not associated with them with all, but all of these diagrams, I did this yesterday, last second, because I'm literally packing and moving right now, and I procrastinated, stereotypical developer, right? And so I described this in plain English. Here's my steps: 1, comma, description, 2, comma, description, and it generated this for me. So, and they have like a really cool service for companies, and it's like more enterprise features. So if you guys run a company or are in charge of like engineering teams or anything, I actually might plug this into our company because it's a great way to generate diagrams and store them. So shameless plug, I guess. But yeah, so the general idea is of the whole service is you register your domain name with SCS, and then you can just generate emails for yourself or people if you're trying to make a service. And then after that, you got your email, go subscribe to whatever you want, TLDR and everything. And then what happens is, every day when they send out an email, it's going to come to SCS, and then SES, their email, AWS's email service for, I guess, all the Python gang in here. They only have a couple of integrations to kind of send the message along, but one of them is one of AWS's oldest, called Simple Notification Service. And then what I'm doing is just basically using that as a proxy to put it into a queue. So SQS is their super managed, super basic, very almost hands-off queue service. So I just basically shove all the emails into there, or messages that reference the email into there. I guess what I forgot to put on the diagram is the raw email, which is a massive text file. It's a text-based protocol. So there's headers, all the HTML and CSS and English is all in one big text file that gets stored in AWS S3. So just their blob storage. So basically you get a nice little message in your queue that just says, here's the ID and then the bucket we threw your email in, and then some other metadata, right? So naturally, after that, you can hook up any type of compute to then grab those messages and then say, okay, cool, I'm going to go grab that email from the S3 bucket, and then you're off to the races and processing it. And at the AWS level, I'm using Lambda because I've actually never used Lambda or their serverless stuff before, even though I've been in AWS for like almost a decade now. I've actually just never had a use case where serverless made sense. So I said, why not? And for my personal project, I don't want to be paying for compute, right, when it's not running. So that's the great thing about Lambda. You pay for when it runs, the whatever milliseconds it runs, and you don't pay for it after that. And then for the database, I'm using AWS Aurora. It's their in-house database engine, but it's MySQL or Postgres compatible. You choose the flavor you want when you spin it up. And very recently, they've introduced a serverless version. And even more recently, it now scales to 0. So your compute and your database can go to 0. You don't pay for anything. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah. Um, Got a couple of Lambda, so I'll just blast through them real quick. And then for all the Python folks, I'll show you the code. I'm not afraid to get down and dirty. You guys can make fun of me. So again, kind of the first Lambda, this handles the emails coming in. So the whole idea is quick technical detail. AWS handles this glue for you, but if you were to like make your own code that's listening to the SQS queue directly, what happens is you'll get batches of messages at a time, and you can configure your connection to say how many. So I think by default it's like 10. So it's live/batch. It's one of those gray areas, but essentially by default you'll get, if there's 10 emails in the queue, you'll get like 10 messages, right? Or if there's 20, then you'll get a batch of 10. That's what you're processing at a time. AWS, if you're using Lambda, they have a direct integration with SQS. So you basically just tell AWS, hook them up, and they take care of that kind of glue code. You don't see it. So all you know is, hey, if I put a message in the queue, my Lambda function will just spin up and fire and start processing. It's pretty slick. So yeah, basically all I do is I grab the newsletter name, which luckily I have a magic trick for that. All of these newsletters, thank God, put the name of the newsletter in the subject. And that comes as part of the metadata that's in the SQS message. So without even grabbing the like giant text blob that is the email and then trying to parse that ahead of time, I can at least see who it's from immediately. And obviously you can get the recipient also, which is going to be the, whoever's email you use to put in the newsletter, right? So once you get that quick information, then I do a quick check because LLMs are expensive and they take a long time. So I basically say, and you can kind of get the idea here. I'm trying to like maybe make a micro SaaS out of this if this works really well. That's kind of my goal here. So the idea is if it's not just me that this is running for, but like let's say everyone in this room subscribe to TLDR, I don't want to like pay for like everyone's LLM call. There's no point either, right? So I can just basically do a quick check. Have I processed this newsletter specifically? If I have, I just associate it with your email, and then all the data is already in the database. I just do some magic database wiring, and then good to go. Otherwise, I'll process it. And basically, what you do to process it is I use some Python. So this is actually the main reason why I chose Python. A lot of great packages to do a lot of parsing and crap you just don't want to write by hand. So there's a really nice library to deal with emails, actually. Like it knows the whole email format, and it even has a part of the tool is it lets you deal with the HTML and CSS in the email, even though that's more of a web dev thing sometimes, right? So basically, I just strip that massive text file. I blow everything away except the English. That's the general idea. And LLMs are really good at speaking English and other languages too, but around here they're in English. So I strip everything out, and then I just pass it to the LLM. I found that it takes a little bit longer, but O4 Mini is actually on the cheaper end if you're gonna go with an OpenAI model, and it's a reasoning model. So it takes a little bit longer to process because it's a reasoning model, but I'm way more confident it's gonna strip everything out correctly. And again, it's actually on the cheaper end because it's the mini version. So nice trade-off there between, sacrificing some speed for accuracy and then cost effectiveness. And again, I'm only need to process every newsletter once a day, right? So even if I have 1,000 newsletters, because I have that many people subscribing to different newsletters, that's only 1,000 LLM calls. You can handle that, right? And then you don't need to do that after. You don't need to do it again after that. And then after that, I get a nice, and again, I'll show you guys the code so you can see what I'm talking about better here in a little bit. But the really nice thing is with the OpenAI SDK, and again, you can use that for other services, but a part of their SDK under the hood is you can give it a Pydantic model, and it will automatically tell the LLM to return your data as JSON that fits that model, and then it will serialize it into that model. So basically, just by calling the OpenAI SDK, you get a Python class back with all your data in it. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah. And most companies out there realized OpenAI made a banger SDK like immediately. So most AI companies out there are actually OpenAI API compatible. So you can literally just use the OpenAI SDK in Python or TypeScript, and you just swap out the API URL. And even though it's OpenAI's SDK, it'll work for a lot of other services. So fun fact, if you guys haven't played with that yet. So yeah, this is the part that's the magic, and I broke it last night, so I can't demo it, but I have another Lambda that's meant to run once a day. So the idea is all the email newsletters, they get sent in early in the morning. And then when you're confident that you have all of your newsletters, then there's another Lambda that just fires up and it does that actual like aggregation. So it'll just go grab all the newsletters for you, and it will cluster them together. And again, I'll show this in the code. Another magic trick I did in the processing, I didn't point out in the diagram, is I generate vector embeddings for each individual article in the email. So I strip out the articles in the newsletter, and then per article, I generate vector embeddings for it. And if you guys don't know what that means, it's just a really big array of really random numbers that mean something, that encode what the meaning is. So the idea is if there's two vectors, and that plays into here, I basically just grab um, all of the email or all the newsletter articles, because I now have everything by article at that level. I just grab all your articles, no matter what newsletter they came from. Um, there's some nice Python libraries that are, I'll call it old school AI, where it can just run, on your CPU or whatever, and it's really good at doing stuff like comparing if vectors are close together. So again, the general idea is if there's two articles that are talking about the same thing, then their vectors are probably close together mathematically. I don't remember math after college, so I can't tell you how it works, but it's magic. And basically, you just run this mathematical operation on it, and it just says like, hey, these things are together, these things are together. So you basically get a list of lists where you have like in the list, each sub list is all the articles that said, hey, these are all talking about the same thing. And then from there, I just chuck each one of those sub lists into an LLM again, and I say, summarize this and make sure you grab all the unique information between everything. That way you have like a super article at the end, right? So like one person could say this fact, another person could say this fact across newsletters, and now you have one article that tells you both, so you don't miss out on anything. And yeah, so that's how that guy works. I think that's it on the presentation. So sorry, I'm trying to go really fast because I'm the lightning talk today. We have another presentation from Jeff. So let me just pull this over real quick. We'll snap through it. Can you repeat the question? Yeah, so he asked, what database do I use to store the vector embeddings? I'm using the Postgres version of AWS Aurora, and they support the PG vector extension. So for those of you who don't know, Postgres is, you've probably heard of Postgres, super popular relational database. They have an extension that makes it so that the database knows how to handle those vector embeddings. So as long as you have a Postgres database with the extension, you can all of a sudden magically store vector embeddings and then tell it to do stuff with it. So
that's crazy. You have a vector database that scales to 0 now.
yeah, I have a vector database that scales to 0. That's right. Okay, so again, I'm sorry for the driving on this is going to be a little hard. So this is the like newsletter processing Lambda. For those of you who are not familiar with Lambdas, you have to have a starting point. So you can tell AWS what your starting point is, but by default, they expect a function called Lambda handler, and then you're expecting some type of data, and then you're always expecting a context for whatever Lambda is. And because I hooked this one up to SQS, my event is an SQS event. And AWS provides, I'll give them credit, I'd say like 90% good. They have a really nice library that types their stuff that you can add on. So for Python specifically, because yeah, they've been writing their Python SDK a long time. So as you can imagine, they're trying to play catch up on typing it out. I do some sanity checking here for I kind of just fun fact, I'm using Sentry, even as a personal project, I'm using Sentry for logging. So I just do some sanity checking, and then my style of programming is I throw exceptions when there's a problem. I don't try to solve the problem. And then I have a catch-all, and it gets logged, and then I go from there. So that's why you might say I'm throwing exceptions everywhere. And so the general idea is I have a class that knows how to handle that SQS message specifically. So it's like my AWS specific class here. And then I give it the my like newsletter processing class, or I really give it a function here that does the actual work. So it basically, I'm consuming my messages from AWS, and then I'm plugging in whatever logic I want to, process it once I strip out all the stuff in it. So yeah, to process it, again, there's a lot of crap here, so I'll try to blast through it really quick. But the general idea is you're going to get an event. The event has a certain amount of records that's configurable. So earlier, like I said, the default's 10. So if you have 10 email newsletter events in your queue, then you'll have an array of size 10 here. So basically, I'm just looping through each, SQS message in the queue. There's good old AWS. There's multiple layers to it, so I kind of like unwind the layers a bit to get to what I really want. So you gotta parse the SQS message, which is actually a wrapper around SES's message, and then here you can see I'm getting the S3 bucket name and then the actual object name of the email text file. And here you can see I'm getting that email and the email from it. That's going to end up being the newsletter name, as you can see. Then I grab the email contents, and then yeah, and then I pass that to process it. So basically, not a lot of work here, but this is dealing with all the super AWS specific stuff. I figured I would just try to do that together and separate this out best I could here. But yeah, so basically to process it, you just need who it's to. So like the person's email who's receiving this newsletter name. Again, I'm trying to get that ahead of time. The sent date. This is my primary key in the database. Fun fact: it's the name and the date because every day you're gonna have a new newsletter. So or a new edition of the same newsletter, right? So that's my primary key, and then obviously the contents. So if you drill down into this further, so this is the bread and butter. Yeah, here we go. So this is the bread and butter. So I'll get the actual user out of the database here, and then I'll do a sanity check. Have I processed this newsletter already? And if I have, I'll associate it with that person, and I'm done. And otherwise, I need to do all the hard work. So right here, I have this first step against blow everything away except the English. So if you jump to this real quick, I'll show you. Yeah, so I'm using this library. I actually, now that I think about it, this is literally a part of the Python standard library. Yeah. So very cool. Again, I've used Python for a lot of my career, but this is my first time like just going all in on Python on a project because I'm usually using C# or C and C++. But yeah, the general idea is you can use the built-in library to I won't bore you with it, but you're going to blow all the English away or blow everything away except the English. So you get rid of all the header, you get rid of all the email-y stuff in the text file, so the email headers, and then you still have your content, which is going to be the English and then the HTML and CSS to make it look pretty. Don't need any of that HTML and CSS either. So I am using Beautiful Soup is a really, really popular library to deal with HTML and CSS. So I'm using that. So I'm basically using a combination of two different libraries to strip out everything. And that's step one. And that was a big thing to figure out. And it probably would have taken me a week of hardcore developing in what little free time I had, but I plugged that into Claude and whipped that out in about 10 minutes. So I'm using AI to make my AI just work. Yeah. So after you have the raw email, the raw English and nothing else, you can see right here. Again, I'm using the OpenAI SDK, but you swap out the base URL. So there's my OpenRouter URL, and then obviously plug in your key, and all of a sudden, the same SDK you know how to use, you can call any model you want. And the way you do that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is right here in the model. Normally, this would be just like, O4 mini, or a lot of times OpenAI has like the date, right? Because they have, depending on like when they updated the model, they'll have like different versions even of the same model. With OpenRouter, they just have a massive list. So you say like provider and then the model. So this could be Anthropic, Claude Sonnet 4, for example. So that's how you swap out your models in one line. And I could literally just change the whole processing of this on the second half of it. And right here also, this is the magic I mentioned earlier too. So this is a Pydantic model that just has, newsletter name, the date published, a list of articles, which itself is it's a list of another Pydantic model. And then I do take out the advertisements because if I am going to make like a side hustle with this, I don't know the legality of blowing every email of advertisements away. So I figured it'd be good to experiment if I can still get those and store those, and if the model's smart enough to see what's an advertisement versus what's an article. O4 Mini actually does a really good job of that. So that's fun. But yeah, so literally all you have to do is just put on the response format field your Pydantic model, and this can be any Pydantic model. And again, the OpenAI SDK will turn that into a JSON schema under the hood, and then send that to the model. And the models nowadays are smart enough to be like, oh, you want your, generated data eventually sent back in a JSON format, whether it was sent to it in a JSON format or not. And then when it comes back to the SDK, it'll then serialize that into your class. So basically, I have a little, I wrap this in a Lambda because I have a nice little retry helper function here. But literally, if I hover over this, say completion is parse chat completion. That's OpenAI's wrapper. And then parse newsletter. So basically, whatever you put here, you're getting that back, and it's a one-liner. So Python, Pydantic, OpenAI, even if you're not calling OpenAI, is like the best combination in the world for messing with LLMs. And after that, it's very simple. I just go through all the individual articles, and I save them in the database, and then I snuck in the generating the vector embeddings right there. That just calls OpenAI's vector embedding model. So, and that's really all there is to it. For aggregating the newsletters, I won't bore you with the code, but other than, I guess I'll show, I did reference this. So all I'm doing is pulling them out, clustering them together, sending them to the model for summarization. So that's all that's happening there um, for like this whole function really. But I did want to show you guys just real quick if I can find it. There's a lot going on here. Let's see, it's up here somewhere. Right here, yeah. So cluster articles. I'm using the DBSCAN function, and it's the vector. This is really important. If you generate vector embeddings, for those of you who don't know, you need to know the like metric, or like it, you kind of think of it of like the type of embedding. Most of the time, most people recommend just using cosine as the metric for it. So that's really important for when so you generate the, embeddings, but then when you want to use them, you also need to know like how they were generated. So in this case, I'm going to cluster them, and the clustering algorithm needs to know what type of embeddings they are. But yeah, I'm just using DBSCAN. This controls like how small or wide of a net, I guess you could say, you're using to like cluster things together. So if it's too big of a net, you might have, in this specific example, right, newsletter articles that like maybe not quite have anything to do with each other other than like one keyword. And if you go too narrow, well, every newsletter article is going to be in its own cluster, and then you didn't do anything, right? You just did a bunch of work for nothing. So this is like the magic property here. You want to tune this to where it's going to actually put the articles that are related together, no more, no less. And AI told me 0.3 is good, and I went to 0.2 and I went to 0.4, and they both were awful. So it's very, very picky. And AI told me how to do this right the first time, which is impressive. So yeah. And yeah, I'll stop there because this was supposed to be lightning talk, and I feel like I went over. So yeah. And for fun, also bonus points, let me try to
Yeah, if anybody's got questions,
query the database.
microphone around.
My very small question with your code, can you go into your retry function? I'm very curious if did you write the retry?
Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah. Where is it at?
You were Claude.
Oh, I wrote the retry.
Line 79, for example.
Yeah. It's very, very again, this is super basic. I kind of like was trying to balance writing production code, and then this is a pet project, and then it turned into a little bit more of a pet project, and then now I'm trying to move, and it didn't go anywhere for a month.
I mean, using a Lambda is very cool, so I have not
Oh, yeah.
thought to do that. So that's cool.
I try to do a lot of really cool like magic tricks. What are they called? Higher order functions, right? A function that takes a function as an argument. That's one of the best magic tricks for many different design patterns out there. And so there's little areas where like, even though this is Python, I got some tricks up my sleeve, and I tried to figure out the Python way of making it work. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. I saw that you had in your code a great big do not change any text. And when I've given LLMs that response, it ignores it. It changes text frequently. Have you noticed that? And have you done anything to double check for that?
It worked when I started this project, and as the world goes nowadays with the exponential curve of progress, 2 versions of just OpenAI models came out since then, and it doesn't do anything now. They're smart. Yeah.
Any online?
Actually, very anecdotal, but like I've
Hold on.
used, sorry,
Yeah, very anecdotal, but like in that case, don't use negatives. I'm trying to have a hard time saying it, but like to say
Yeah.
like you must keep the same text or something like that instead of like using negatives. It seems to respond better in those cases, but
Until they change it again, and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Any online questions?
Okay.
Anybody got questions online?
I don't think we have any so far.
Of course.
Yeah, actually,
I was
like
going
your
to
usage
prove it
of-
went to the database. Just
I like
like,
usage of Sentry to quickly get feedback from running Lambdas, because it's so hard to track if you've all done Lambda debugging,
yeah.
to go into CloudWatch logs and try and click through all the little twisties to find the stuff. And Sentry is really nice. We use Sentry. I'll put a shameless plug in for them. They're not a sponsor.
Yeah.
They do make an awesome product, and it is really helpful. I want to go back to your data. You had some classes in there where you were storing the data structure of the email.
Yeah. 1 second.
Okay. Trying to get it to work again.
Yeah, because I sent those emails at the very beginning of the talk, and I'm just simply trying to see if they went. It worked last night, but everyone knows how demos go, right? So, okay. This is just a built-in query editor because I have this database actually in like I call it a backend subnet, so it has 0 internet access. There are certain tricks I've learned in my career, and even on personal projects, I'll have like Terraform code or whatever for it. So I'm like, why not have a 3-tiered subnet, VPC, even if it's a personal project? So yeah.
Approve of treating even personal things like they're real.
Yeah.
Because then they become real and they never get fixed.
Yeah.
Take that as real.
Yeah.
That, and you play the game like you practice, right? So some really smart coach said that one time, and I don't remember who it was. So, but yeah, so here you go. It worked, thank God. So you can see there's the name. So there's TLDR and TLDR AI. I'm sorry, this view sucks. I wish I had a better one for you, but these are JSON tables in Postgres. You can see there's a list of advertisements. Those are boring, right? This actually might be the only one in here. Yeah, so the advertisements get shoved there, but the interesting one is obviously going to be this one. Right there, yeah. So basically I have, can I expand this? Let me see. No, I give up. All right. Basically, you have newsletter ID, obviously points to the, oh, there it goes, the newsletter. And then there you go. This is really good. So I pull the headline out and then I pull the full text of the article out. And then obviously the full text is what I'm generating the vector embeddings for. Even in this view, this is really nice. You can see stripping everything out. So yeah, there's a lot of work just to make this table, right? You got to blow all the email like raw text stuff away, and then you got to like try it. And this is a superpower I think of like LLMs is stuff like this. You could do most of this work, even a couple of decades ago. Even if the Python libraries weren't as good back then, right? But then there's the whole like having something smart enough to know what's an article, what's an advertisement, and then this is the headline, this is the body, and just doing that automatically, we finally have that power. So projects like this get super fun and possible. And then for those of you who don't know what vector embeddings are, a ton of floating point
Like
numbers.
being the matrix.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Yeah. Did you had a question?
I
Yeah.
had a question about that.
Yeah.
Go back to you had some classes that were tracking this data of the newsletters.
Yeah.
It was
Do you remember?
it was a short file, a couple classes with just some
Yep.
properties.
My Pydantic models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See models. Okay, I'm a little lost. Let me always got to collapse and then go. See common models. Yeah, so here are my like main ones I
Okay.
showed you guys. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so these I assume Pydantic is automatically making these data classes, and so you get the benefit of like the Dunder inits and the Dunder reppers and all that kind of stuff. I've actually not played much with Pydantic, so that's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like literally, like the way it works is you just make a good old fashioned class, but then you have it inherit from their base model. And this thing has a ton of like functions and hidden properties on it.
Yeah.
But some of the public functions are you can convert this into like JSON. So like basically,
Cool helpers all right there.
yeah. So you could just call like parse newsletter to JSON. I don't remember what
Nice.
they call it, and then all of a sudden you have a string. So you don't need like a separate serialization library or anything. It's just
That's awesome.
you can go back
Okay.
and forth. Yeah.
Cool. Any last questions for Austin?
We
Do
do
you have
have,
an example? Sorry, do you have an example of the
Here, wait.
output, the aggregate?
No, because I broke my Lambda last night. So yeah. But it's what you would expect. It's so basically I have another database table that looks very, very similar to this. So just think of like if you, I don't know if there's any I should have used yesterday's TLDR and TLDR AI because there was like one or two that crossed over. But basically in my other table, you would just have one of the big things and modern LLMs are really good at this. So going back to the like giving it, your prompt engineering and trying to force it to do something. Nowadays, I can just simply say, do not change the text of the headline. Do not change any of the text in the article. So like it'll naturally want to summarize or help you out. And so I just literally say now without any, crazy prompting or capital letters or anything, I just say like, please leave it as is. Yeah. Half the time I say please. Yeah. I can go look at my prompt right now. But yeah, so the idea is like this is from TLDR, right? I want to preserve the writer's own words and stuff to start out. Then yeah, I have another table where it looks just like this, and then it'll be the LLM's headline and the LLM's article. So yeah.
Yeah, last question. I just saw a headline probably last week about S3 vectors, and I'm just wondering if that would be.
I saw that too.
Interested in trying.
Yeah, this stuff's changing way too fast for me to even like modify my little project here. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because initially when you showed your architecture diagram, I wondered if you would have used Dynamo for the database, but does Dynamo doesn't have vector support maybe?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that'd be the limiting.
Does anyone know?
You talk about vectors, like what's so special about vectors that they're hard to store in a database? Like they're just an array of looks. Like why is that?
I think there's indexes that are optimized, like in PostgreSQL
Yeah.
PG vector for doing some of the cosine searches. That was the DB scan.
DBSCAN, that
that-
actually think it came from, is either scikit-learn or whatever.
Yeah, so that's the on the CPU.
Yeah, that's on the CPU, but there are, with the PG vector extension, you can actually do some vector functions in the
Operations
database. Yeah. So the
That's pretty
database's engine and server will do that for you.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
Austin, you'll be around for a little bit after.
Yeah,
For questions.
I'm bugging
Austin,
afterwards.
You got a question?
Okay.
Wait, no, not from, we have one more, okay, one
Yeah.
more question from online. So someone online got it.
Yes, we do have one question. So Tyler is 2 weeks into Python and he's a student at Code U. What advice would you have for someone who is majoring in AI and robotics?
Man, okay. AI and robotics. I honestly, I would say you're on the right path because from what I personally am seeing in the industry, you either need to start going up the stack, so working with the LLMs at least, or even learning how to like train them and build them, or you need to go down the stack and working at like compiler chip level. Everyone who does purely web dev, I think those are gonna be the first jobs to get like highly automated one day. So yeah. And is that gonna happen now? No, but just look at like what happened to the horse when the car was invented. You know, it didn't take 5 years, it didn't take 10 years. And if you're doing that right now, you're safe. But in 50 years, you know, if you're in school, during your career, for at least definitely your lifetime, I think a lot of this is going to shift. So my general advice is just go to the very top of the stack or go to the bottom. So do you want to torture yourself with the hardware, even though it's super cool? Or do you want to torture yourself with not knowing how the artificial brain thinks and trying to keep up? So, yeah.
Pretty good. All right. Thanks again, Austin.
Yeah. Thanks.